Why is Israel so very different from Pakistan? Israel was created as a haven for Jews, for their prosperity, on the basis of equality of Jews. Pakistan was created by feudals. Jinnah represented the feudals before the Second World War. You see that the major scientists in the Western world were Jews. Islam lost its vitality some 800 years ago. Innovation, the creativity that Muslims had was crushed by religious thought. Muhammad bin Qasim came here, right? The first Pakistani, we are told. Yes. What a ridiculous thing. Why are we scientifically backward? It's because Muslims did not develop an intellectual culture. I think Bhutto was also a modernist establishment. Our political and military establishment said that Pakistan's continued survival depends upon its being an Islamic state. It's a completely nonsensical idea to insist on the two-nation theory. How can you continue to worship something that is dead, which doesn't work, and you teach it to your children and you pump it into them in this Mutaliya Pakistan?
Hello and welcome to New Wave History, and in this episode I have a very distinguished figure with me, Dr. Pervez Hoodbhoy. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Sir, today we want to discuss Pakistan's a very serious problem, a very immediate problem that we see has been expanding over the last few years, ever since the killing of Salman Taseer, Punjab's governor. That Pakistan is fast becoming not only more Islamist, but also a bit extreme, and the mob mentality has taken over the population. So, do you think that this has been going on for quite some time? Obviously, since 1947, we created the country in the name of Islam. But at the same time, we see Israel became a country in 1948 roughly, and it was also created in the name of Judaism. So now we see that Pakistan has not been able to progress when we come to technology, when we come to sciences. On the other hand, we see the Israeli people and Israeli state not only in hard sciences but also in cultural and social sciences, when we see people like writers like Yuval Noah Harari, who has become a global sensation over the past decade or so. So why do you see that? Where have we gone wrong? Because both nations are pretty religious at some level, states at least, not nations. So where have we gone wrong?
Oh, so there is a basic misunderstanding over here. Israel was not created on the basis of Judaism. It was not created as a state where the religion would thrive, but rather it was to be a haven for Jews who were persecuted around the world, particularly in Germany. And so after Hitler, the West gave full support to the creation of Israel. But even more, let's remember that the Zionist movement was in the beginning a progressive movement, a socialist movement. Ben Gurion, who was the first prime minister of Israel, was a socialist, and he was a labor organizer. And so Histadrut was the organization that he headed, which created in the beginning the kibbutzim. And this was a socialist movement within Israel. But you are asking, why is Israel so very different from Pakistan? Well, first of all, let me count the reasons by which it is different. First, as I've emphasized, Israel was created as a haven for Jews, for their prosperity, on the basis of equality of Jews. Pakistan was created by feudals. Jinnah represented the feudals, managed them, and of course also the peers and the mullahs who gave full support to the Muslim League. This was totally different from Israel. Second, the Jews had been a persecuted people for very long, and they sought refuge in their books. And therefore, they became intellectually very capable. In fact, even before the Second World War, you see that the major scientists in the Western world were Jews. They took all the Nobel Prizes. Well, not all, but many of them. Albert Einstein was a Jew. All the big names among German scientists who were the top scientists of those times were Jews and so forth. So there is the tradition which has thrived within the Jewish tradition, within the Jews, and it continues with the kind of education that they give to their children. So even before a child is born, they will play music to the child in the mother's womb. As soon as the child is born, they'll give all sorts of stimuli. Then the very best education, which means opening the creative faculties of the mind, that is the Jewish way of bringing up their young. Compare that with the Muslim way. Well, Islam lost its vitality some 800 years ago. Between the 9th and the 13th centuries, Muslim civilization was vibrant, dynamic. And you know why? Because it readily accepted the influence of Greeks, of the Greek treasures of knowledge that Muslims encountered when they started spreading across the Arabian Peninsula, when they came to Baghdad, in particular, the translation process and so on. But because of the clash with orthodoxy, and I have a book on this subject, essentially the orthodoxy crushed independent thought. They said, we don't need any kind of external influences. And so the innovation, the creativity that Muslims had was crushed by religious thought. It has never recovered. So today you don't see any major inventions. I mean, ask yourself, who invented electricity, computers, antibiotics, space travel, etc.? The first piston engine, etc. Zero, exactly zero Muslim contribution in that. Look at everybody else. Look at the Chinese. Look at the Russians. Look at the Indians now. Japanese. They all have a lot to show. There is nothing to show on part of the Muslims. So it's not just a Pakistani problem. On the South, in the South Asian context, it's even more serious. Muhammad bin Qasim came here, right? The first Pakistani, we are told.
Yes. Yes.
What a ridiculous thing. But when did he come? 712.
12.
When did the Islamic Golden Age begin? Well, I'd say 850.
Yes, roughly.
Roughly. So he came long before Muslims were enlightened. And he came just for the loot and the plunder, and he won with the power of the sword. Enlightened Muslim thought, unfortunately, never reached the Indian subcontinent. And so you had the various Muslim kingdoms, particularly the Mughals, who then did many magnificent things. I mean, the Taj Mahal, all these beautiful gardens and the mausoleums and all, but they never built a university. They were not interested in science. And in fact, as the scientific revolution was going on in Europe, they looked the other way. They said, we don't need it at all. But what's even worse, and this poor Sir Syed Ahmad Khan hit his head on this again and again, and he was only partially successful. There was this refusal to accept anything from outside. We are the best of people. We are the chosen ones of God. We will go to heaven. Everybody else will go to hell. We don't need to learn from anybody else. That's the kind of thought that permeated not just Mughal culture, but Muslim culture across the subcontinent. And today, Pakistan is paying the price for that. If you ask, why are we scientifically backward? It's because Muslims did not develop an intellectual culture. Yes, shairi, poetry, music, architecture, beautiful. And of course, life is more than science, but it's science, it's technology that has moved China to where it is, India to where it is, Europe to where it is. So sadly, we don't seem to recognize this fact.
But the reason why I drew the analogy, I think Israel became Israel because Zionism was fundamentally the argument is that there has to be a country where the Jews can survive, and some Muslim modernists have also made a similar case for Pakistan as well. For example, Dr. Aisha Jalal says so, and there are various others. And Jinnah was sort of modern in his private life, at least, or his personal life. But you just mentioned Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. I wanted to know why this tradition has not taken root in, because we do see a Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and a Hali or a Sayyid Amir Ali or even Iqbal to a level was modernist. But when we see because the problem I want you to share your opinion on is that after 1947, once that country has become a nation state, why have we not been? Because is it because we created a country in the name of Islam, or is it because we haven't really tried to develop it? Because there are other countries that have had their fair share of religious articles in their constitutions. But for example, Hasina Wajid says that she couldn't remove name of God, but she also said, for example, she couldn't remove Quran from the oath, but she said, or any other holy book that you may profess. So she added those things in the constitution. Why do we not never succeed in, making these small, taking these small steps towards modernization or secularization?
I think we did take such steps earlier on. So, of course, Jinnah passed away very early. I don't think he would have had much influence had he stayed on for another 10 years, because his job was basically to make Pakistan, and then after that he lost power. But you see that under Ayub Khan, for example, or let's say the first 6 prime ministers of Pakistan, where there was no fundamental direction, but there was no concerted effort to impose a religious code upon Pakistanis. There wasn't any such thing. Ayub Khan, not just in his personal life, but also in his political life, was secular. After all, the family laws were promulgated in his rule. And he did not ever say that our survival depends upon us being Muslim, but rather he appealed to nationalism.
And he
industrialized, of course, you could say, with American help, and the fact that we sold our souls to America during the Cold War. We gave them all sorts of bases over here. The U-2 flew from Peshawar, etc. All that is old stuff. I think Bhutto was also a modernist. He was certainly a man who was Berkeley educated. He was a man who was widely read. In no way could he be said to be religious in his personal life or his public life earlier on. मैं शराब पीता हूँ, मैं लोगों का खून तो नहीं पीता. So that sort of stuff. But when his political survival came under threat, then he started to appeal to religious sentiment, and especially the 1974 Ahmadi Ordinance that was passed by the National Assembly. That was the turning point. And now then, we know Zia comes after that. So it's when our establishment, our political and military establishment said that Pakistan's continued survival depends upon its being an Islamic state. That is, Islam is the only basis for the remaining 4 provinces to stay together. That's where the union started to fray. Because we said, or rather I should say the Punjabi ruling class said, that we don't care what happens in Balochistan. Sindh Yeah, we can pacify them, and of course, people like Zardari and the Bhuttos, they can be bought over easily. They are trying the same thing in Gilgit-Baltistan, and of course, we see now a major confrontation happening in the front in KPK. Now, that's not the way Pakistan can be kept together. It's a completely nonsensical idea to insist on the two-nation theory. The two-nation theory is dead. It died in 1971. It was buried. It was thrown into the Bay of Bengal. Of course, the Bengalis don't want to be part of India. Why should they? They're now an independent country. Now nationalism is what guides their actions. The basis for Pakistan now has to be a one-nation theory. Not two-nation. That's nonsense. One-nation theory. One-nation theory says that we who belong to Pakistan, to its soil, are all equal. And that's not a radical demand. It says you don't look at a person's religion, sect, province, mother tongue. You treat them all equally. And the rich and the poor, you treat them equally. Then that becomes the basis for Pakistan. So all the other is flim flam. Throw it away now. Pakistan needs this one nation theory as its basis.
Yes. So this is a theory that you have given.
By the way, it is punishable by 10 years of imprisonment if you say the two-nation theory is nonsense. I'm saying it. Okay, so go ahead. Punish me for that. But it's dead. How can you continue to worship something that is dead, which doesn't work, and you teach it to your children and you pump it into them in this Mutalia Pakistan studies, which is a lot of nonsense.
So so you talked about this one nation theory that is, and I think the two nation theory, as you just said, that it is dead. And if it is dead and we are still worshipping it, then we are a nation that is looking backward. And one nation theory is what can take us forward. And I think that this is a brilliant message that we are giving today from this interview. And thanks a lot, Dr. Saab, for your time. And I hope that viewers would have learned a lot from what Dr. Saad has said today. And this is Ali Wasi from New Wave History signing off. Till the next time.